Right now, there's a trick being used on you, maybe today, maybe this week, and it's the exact same trick that was used on kings, generals, and entire empires 3,000 years ago. A behavior expert named Chase Hughes has spent his career studying how people get controlled without ever realizing it. And when you line his work up next to what was happening inside ancient temples, the overlap is almost too perfect. By the end of this video, you're going to recognize this trick the next time it happens to you. And it might be sooner than you think. Picture this, you're a king. You've just marched for 10 days to reach a mountain temple in ancient Greece. Before you're even allowed near the priestess, you walk through a long, narrow passage cut straight into the rock. The air smells strange, thick with smoke from burning herbs. The walls throw every footstep back at you. By the time you reach the inner chamber, you're already a different person than you were when you started walking. Then, and only then, do you hear her answer. A handful of words, sometimes barely a sentence, and kings built entire military campaigns around it. This was the Oracle of Delphi, and for hundreds of years she didn't just answer questions. She shaped the decisions of the most powerful people on earth. But here's where things get interesting. The words she said almost never mattered as much as everything that happened before she said them. Chase Hughes built his career studying exactly this kind of thing. Not what people say, but everything that happens around what they say. His work on behavior and influence keeps circling back to one idea. By the time someone hears the actual message, their mind has already been shaped by everything that led up to it. The room, the weight, the mood, the setup. That's not an accident, it's a tool. And it's the same tool that Mountain Temple was using 3,000 years ago, just with rock instead of a waiting room. And this is where most people make a mistake. They think manipulation is about clever words, convincing arguments, the perfect line. But the people who are really good at influencing others barely care about the words at all. They care about what happens inside your head before the words even arrive. There's a concept in psychology called anchoring. It means the first piece of information you receive becomes the reference point for everything that follows. Whatever comes first sets the scale, and your brain measures everything else against it, usually without you noticing. That tunnel at Delphi, that was an anchor. By the time visitors reached the priestess, their sense of normal had already been reset. Everything afterward felt heavier, more meaningful, more true, simply because of what came before it. You see this exact same thing today. Walk onto a car lot, and the salesperson often shows you the most expensive model first. Suddenly, the car they actually wanted to sell you feels like a bargain. A real estate agent might show you an overpriced house first, so the next one feels like a deal, even if it's still too much. Now, this next part might surprise you. This trick doesn't just affect what you buy, it affects who you trust. Authority bias is the tendency to believe something simply because it came from someone who looks like they're in charge. Not because the information is correct, just because of who said it. Ancient priesthoods understood this instinctively, long before anyone had a name for it. They wore specific robes. They used language ordinary people couldn't understand. They controlled who got access and who didn't. None of that made their information more accurate, but it made people far less likely to question it. If a priest in elaborate robes, standing in a temple most people weren't even allowed to enter, told you something about your future, you didn't argue. You listened. And the fact that almost nobody could just walk in and check made the whole thing feel even more valuable. Scarcity and authority working together, long before either word existed. So why does this matter? Because that exact formula, the robes, the restricted access, the specialized language, didn't disappear when temples did. They just changed clothes. There's a well-known effect in psychology where people will follow instructions from someone wearing a lab coat far more readily than from someone in regular clothes, even when the instructions are identical and the person has no real authority at all. Sound familiar? It's the same mechanism as the priest's robe, a uniform, a title, a badge, a certificate on the wall. None of these things prove someone is right, but they all flip the same switch in your brain, the one that says this person is in charge, so I should listen. Chase Hughes talks a lot about how quickly people hand over their judgment the moment they sense authority, even fake authority. And once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. The doctor's office, the customer service call where someone suddenly puts on a more formal voice, the online ad with a man in a suit standing in front of a bookshelf full of books he's never read. Here's something most people don't know about ancient prophecies. They were almost always vague on purpose. One famous story involves a king who asked the oracle whether he should go to war. The answer he got was something like, "You will destroy a great empire." He took that as a green light, marched off to battle, and lost. The empire that got destroyed was his own. The prophecy was technically correct either way. That's not an accident. Vague statements that could apply to almost any outcome feel deeply personal and accurate, no matter what actually happens. Sound like anything you've read in a horoscope, or heard from a life coach, or seen in a political speech promising change. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable. The vaguer a statement is, the more room your own brain has to fill in the meaning. And when your brain fills in the meaning, it almost always makes that meaning feel true. Let's go back to anchoring for a second, because this one shows up in your life more than almost anything else. Whoever says the first number in a negotiation usually controls where it ends up. If a job offer starts at a certain salary, every counteroffer gets measured against that number, even if the number was completely made up to begin with. Restaurants do this with menus too. That one absurdly expensive dish at the top isn't really meant to sell. It's there to make everything underneath it look reasonable by comparison. Once your brain has a number to compare things to, it stops asking whether that number made sense in the first place. It just starts measuring from there. The ancient world didn't have menus or job offers, but it absolutely had this. The first vision, the first symbol, the first ritual a person experienced set the scale for everything that came after, exactly the same way a price tag does now. So how do you actually protect yourself from all this? The first step is simple. Start paying attention to what happens right before someone asks you for something. Not the ask itself, the setup before it. Were you made to wait in a certain room? Did someone establish their title or credentials before getting to the point? Was a number, a price, or an idea planted early, almost casually, before the real conversation even started? Once you start looking for the setup, you'll be shocked how often it's there. Sales meetings, job interviews, even conversations with friends who want something from you, where the favor only comes up after 20 minutes of buttering you up. A simple habit that helps is pausing for just a second before responding to anything that feels like a big ask, and mentally rewinding the last few minutes. What did you see, hear, or experience right before this moment? That rewind alone exposes most setups instantly. The setup is rarely hidden, it's just rarely noticed. And noticing it is most of the battle, because the moment you notice a setup, it stops working on you the same way. Here's the one question that cuts through almost all of this, whether it's anchoring or authority. Strip away the room, the robe, the title, the first number. Would this still convince me if an ordinary person said it to me, in an ordinary place, with none of the setup? If the answer is yes, the information probably holds up on its own. If the answer is no, then the setup was doing most of the work, not the message. Remember at the start of this video, I said you'd recognize this trick happening in your own life, maybe even today. This is it. The next time someone makes you wait, dresses a certain way before talking to you, or throws out a number before they've even made their pitch, you'll know exactly what's happening. 3,000 years later, and it's still the same trick, just running on better lighting. Manipulation has never really evolved. It's just been repackaged generation after generation, from temple walls to phone screens. And the people who learn to spot it are the ones who finally get to make decisions that are actually their own. If this kind of thing fascinates you, I've got another video breaking down how cult leaders use almost the exact same playbook. And honestly, it might explain a few things about your own life too. Hit like if any of this clicked for you, and subscribe if you want more of this, because we've barely scratched the surface.